again. Hello, lovies. It's David McGillivray here, horror icon, comedy legend. And I'm here with, I think it's the 11th edition of Little Did You Know, a chat show in which I talk to people I find interesting, and I hope you agree. And if you do, or indeed if you don't, why not contact me? And you can do that via something which is going to come up now. There's a banner going to appear underneath me. Yes, it's Patreon. It's a secret society for people who enjoy this show. And wait till I tell you about the initiation ceremony. It involves me giving you lots of goodies. You can get one of those. You can get one of those and more things besides, I can assure you. Now, this program is being recorded. Sorry, I've got something in my eye. Beg your pardon. This program is being recorded just after we in the UK have been told that we're going into a lockdown 3, which means basically that we can't go out, we can't meet our friends, which is enormously depressing. It has to be done, of course, but it means that at least I can talk to my mates here, and you can, I hope, enjoy the results. So that's something. Now, my guest today is a writer, especially of stage musicals, and this is a genre which fascinates me. I want to know more about the stage musical. You'll find, I think he just appeared briefly there. He's also involved in writing a musical of film, What I Wrote, and I haven't mentioned this on the show up until now, but the time has come to talk about Trouser Bar The Musical, so that subject's going to come up as well. And I might even be able to persuade my guest to talk about coming out late in life, and I don't mean in his 30s. I think we're talking about an age more adjacent to his 60s. So will you please say hello to the very wonderful Shaun McKenna.
Hello. Oh. How nice to be very wonderful.
True. Shaun, have I said too much? Have I outed you on Little Did You Know?
You may have outed me. You may have outed me a little bit, but everybody I know knows, and I don't think it's any. And the thing is, it came as no surprise to anybody. I mean, one of the most irritating things is I was very, very happily married to a woman for 30 years, who I adored, and she was the love of my life. But before that, in my 20s, I slept with men and women, and then I fell in love, and that was that. And for 30 years, I was utterly faithful, completely in love. We were very happy. We had an amazing time. And 7 years ago, in March, leukemia got her. And for about 4.5 years after that, I couldn't conceive of dating anybody, of seeing anybody. It would still have felt like an infidelity. I'm a terribly, terribly faithful person. And, you know, even though the vows I made were only till death us do part, death had parted us, but I still felt she was around. So after about 4.5 years, friends got itchy feet and started introducing me to a random collection of people. And I also met, again on Facebook, some old friends from my university days, one of whom I had an affair with in my 20s, a man. And we were going to have dinner, and I just started to think, oh, I wonder what might happen. Nothing did.
We're going to talk a lot more about that later in the show. Stay with us. But for now, I'm in my study. Shaun, I have a feeling you must be as well. Am I right?
I am. This is my place of work. This is my place of work, whether we're in lockdown or not. Actually, nothing much has changed.
There's a very appropriate motto behind you. This too shall pass.
Yeah, somebody sent it to me as a postcard, and I just kind of went, yeah, this is true.
It's true.
Yeah.
Um,
And that applies to the good stuff as well as the bad stuff. It's like, you know, the slave whispering into the ear of the Roman emperor, remember you are mortal. You know, everything changes.
we must remember that. Shaun, you studied at the University of Bristol, and then before you became a writer, I didn't know this, you were briefly an actor. Now, how briefly?
Oh, quite brief. Well, to be honest, I wasn't really, well, I don't know that I wasn't really very good, but I had a lot of really bad habits. I did lots of sort of, you know, Landry exams and local festivals and Amdram when I was a teenager. I did drama at university, came out, kind of went, oh, I don't want to be a student anymore. I don't want to retrain. And ended up getting into children's theatre. Started a little company, then worked for splendid companies like Whirligig with David Wood and Polka in Wimbledon. But after about 4 years of doing that, really, my acting style was so broad, I always played old men as well, even when I was 23. It was so kind of like, oh, hello, who are you? Hello, everybody. And when you try and do Chekhov, that kind of style doesn't really work. So I did a bit of understudying in the West End and then met my wife.
Tell me,
that was the end of it.
Tell me who you understudied.
Oh, I understudied on, understudied a wonderful actor, no longer with us, called Michael Thomas, on the first production of The Real Thing, Tom Stoppard, with Roger Rees and Felicity Kendall. And I went in as the replacement ASM understudy on that. I never got to go on.
And this is, as you say, where you met your wife, also an actress?
Also an actress. She was Felicity Kendall's walking understudy, so she was rather a step above me. And then we went off, we had the same agent, and we both went off to do weekly rep in Devon at Sidmouth, at the Manor Pavilion, which is where the magic happened, and we fell in love. And this was about a year later. And that was kind of that. And 4 years ago, I think, they were doing, after Jenny had died, they were doing one of my plays at the Manor Pavilion in the summer season. They were doing my stage version of Ladies in Lavender. And it's happened to coincide with our anniversary. So I went down and had a sentimental journey, and it was absolutely lovely. And I don't ever need to do it again.
Oh, I'm glad it was lovely. Now, as you say, yes, you became, first of all, a playwright. And I'm particularly interested in the adaptations you've done of the novels of an author called Peter James, who I have to say has really chilled my blood in the past. Now, how did this come about? How many of these dramatizations have you done now?
I've done 5. The one that's going out this year, touch wood, with, you know, pandemic, supposedly starting to tour at the beginning of April, called Looking Good Dead, with Adam Woodyatt playing the lead. This will be the 5th. I started with The Perfect Murder, into which we inserted the Roy Grace character, who's Peter's detective, who's also coming to TV screens later in the year, played by John Sim. And then the following year, we did the first of the Roy Grace novels proper, which was called Dead Simple. We then went on to do a third one, which I can't remember the title of. They all have dead in the title, Peter's novels. And then 2 years ago, we did a ghost story called The House on Cold Hill. It came about because I had a play, one of the very first plays I'd done, which has only ever been done once, but has got me lots of work along the way. And Peter Bowles wanted to do it, and we could never get a combination of producer, star, and director that worked at the same time. And he spoke to this young producer, Joshua Andrews, who was just leaving Bill Kenwright to go off on his own then. So this would have been 2014. And I sent it to him, and then he phoned me and said, do you ever do adaptations? And mine is the Pope Catholic kind of answer, because I've done lots of adaptations, lots for BBC Radio over the years. And he asked me to do it.
How do you get on with Peter James?
Peter's lovely. Peter's a really nice, wise man, and he has an extraordinarily complicated mind and is very astute and knows exactly who his readership is and the kind of thing that they like. He is also very generous in that his novels are quite action-packed and quite eventful, and we have to do them on stage with one set and probably no more than 6 or 7 actors at any given point. So he lets me change stuff.
He obviously thinks that you're the right man for the job. Now, as you say, you've got another one coming up later this year. We hope. Looking Good Dead. Now, let's move on to musicals, because, as I said at the beginning, this fascinates me. I suppose everybody thinks they can write a novel. Everyone thinks they can write a play. It's relatively straightforward. A musical is something else. It's such a specific format. And I mean, I love them. I miss them tremendously. I haven't seen one for over a year now, but something occurs to me, and that is that you must need special training to understand this format. Is that true?
I don't think it is. I mean, I did my first one because my stepdaughter was stage managing on a production of a musical in Ipswich, which I should probably not name, though I have subsequently worked with the composer, but I haven't told him this story. And we went to the first night and we're driving back to Brighton. We lived in Brighton at the time, and I went, I could write a better musical than that. And I was starting to write by that point. A week later, an ad appeared in the stage, and usually you never answer ads in the stage because they never give you any money. But this appeared to be a proper company looking for a lyricist. So I answered. I pretended I'd done some lyrics. I wrote some randomly and submitted them, to this what appeared to be terribly respectable company, and it turned out to be, a young director. Well, he was now Sam again at the National, who wanted to be a director, had done a few things, and a young composer straight out of drama school. And it took us 7 years to get the show on.
Did you find it easy immediately to write a musical? Did you?
No. The great gift was that about 3 or 4 months into the process, when we had maybe like 4 or 5 songs and a few scenes, Stephen Keeling, the composer, was accepted as the 13th student of Stephen Sondheim, who was going to be doing a visiting professorship at Oxford. And there wasn't room for me. And anyway, Stephen had submitted other work, not work he'd written with me, because there were only supposed to be 12 people on the course. So the stuff that came back to me via Stephen from Sondheim was the best education. And then 2 or 3 times I got to go up and present work. My first ever lyrics, got put in front of Stephen Sondheim.
How many musicals to date, Shaun?
It must be getting on for, it's certainly 10, it must be getting on for a dozen. I mean, there are other musicals that have been on. I've had 4 in the West End, 2 at Edinburgh, 1, 2, 3 in Germany. How many is that? That's 9. I've got, and I've got 3 or 4 in process waiting to happen, and there must be 5 that got commissioned, but for one reason and another never happened.
Let's talk about the first, and it's called Maddie. Now, it was on briefly in the West End in 1997, but I want to know why you've now written a book about this. What made it so special?
And here is the book, Maddie and Us, because the newer version of Maddie is called Maddie and Me. We changed the title slightly because it's quite a different version. This was the show that we were writing when I worked with Sondheim. This was like the early 90s. It was a fascinating period. We were coming to the end of the huge Lloyd Webber, Bublé and Schomburg stuff. Everybody was saying, oh, people will want smaller musicals, people will want fresher musicals. People didn't, actually. They didn't. If they were paying that much for the theatre, they wanted to go and see their money on stage. So we had a fantastic success at Salisbury. It took us 7 years to get it onto stage in Salisbury. It was critically acclaimed. Charles Spencer, the critic of the Telegraph, was instrumental in raising the last £100,000 for us to get it on in the West End. It was Kenny Wax's first production. He's gone on to do all sorts of things. I mean, notably Six at the moment.
But let's face it, it ran in the West End for 6 weeks. Why write about a flop?
Because at the time, we were so convinced we had a hit on our hands that Oberon Books commissioned a book about the making of Maddie. Of course, when the reviews came out, which were savage, 60-40 against us, and some of them savage, they clearly were no longer interested in publishing the book. And then 20 years later, 2016, That's Entertainment Records brought out a new recording, a 20th anniversary recording with a lot of the cut songs. And they said, well, you should publish the book, you should publish the book. And at the time, we thought it was going to have a new incarnation, as indeed we still think, in America under the new title, Maddie and Me. So we held off. Then that fell through again because the people involved died, which is always a downer in these circumstances. And so come lockdown, I thought it's time to tell the story.
So the book is doing awfully well on Amazon, and the CD is still available as well, isn't it?
The CD is still available. It's all available on iTunes. It's a double CD. It's the original cast recording, and then demos from everybody, from John Barham and Mary Miller, Bonnie Langford, I think, is on there, Jackie Scott, and a couple of new songs that we've written for the new version as well.
Lovely. Let's move on to talk about bigger successes. You wrote Lautrec in 2000 about the painter, and Lord of the Rings in 2007. And for this, you were nominated for an Olivier. Did you go to the ceremony?
I did go to. If I go to the ceremony, we never win. I never win anything. I was nominated for a TV award for my first episode of Heartbeat as well, and I didn't go to that, and we won. I didn't go to the Dora Awards for Lord of the Rings in Canada because I was busy, and we got 8 or 9. So I thought, I'm definitely not missing the Oliviers, and we got nothing, absolutely nothing.
What were you nominated for?
It was nominated for Best Musical.
Did you have your speech ready?
I wasn't going to get to make the speech. Actually, Matthew Watches, who directed it and is credited as co-writer, would have made the speech. Matthew was a great leader.
And who beat you to the prize?
Hairspray.
Oh!
So, Lord of the Rings and Hairspray, you could really not imagine two more different things, two more different examples of musical theatre, really. Different styles, different things. No, Hairspray kind of swept the board that year.
Were you heartbroken?
No, I wasn't expecting to win. I was heartbroken after Maddie. After the first reviews of Maddie came in and the paper landed on my doorstep with the headline on page 3 saying Maddie is a baddie, I just didn't know what to do. We took the dog for a walk on a misty autumn morning, and it was just like, oh, my life is over, my career is over. It had taken 7 years, all documented in this splendid book, 7 years to get us there, and it's all going to end it's all going to end horribly soon. But in fact, like most life-changing events, life goes on. Life goes on.
It does. I want to talk briefly about another show of yours that I missed, and I wish I hadn't. I remember thinking, I've got to see this. It sounded like a joke. Ben-Hur Live.
Ben-Hur Live, yes. Now, I was, I don't know what I can legally say about Ben-Hur Live. I was approached by a German producer who said he wanted to do Ben-Hur at the O2 Arena with a sea battle, with a gladiator fight, with, I think I put the gladiator fight in, with the horse race and all the rest of it. And he got some amazing people together, and in the end, a fantastic team. But he was essentially, well, all producers have to be mad to do the job, but he was essentially mad. And what this coincided with the last big recession and all the banks collapsing. And so they took the funding away, but he carried on regardless. He wasn't going to be told no, and he carried on regardless. And he also insisted the show, so that it could travel all over the world, should have dialogue in Latin and Aramaic, so it felt authentic. So we did that.
Tell me, Shaun, briefly about the chariot race.
The chariot race. The chariot race, on the days it went well, was actually really good. There was a man called Nicky the Horse who was in charge of the horses and the chariot race. I mean, we'd been to a big French theme park called Puy de Fou, which has a chariot race in it, which is pretty spectacular. And we had 5 or 6 really good stunts spread over the 10 circuits of the thing. Nicky the Horse, however, another mad person, insisted that even though he physically resembled the guy playing Ben-Hur's enemy, had to play Ben-Hur. And on the first night, he took his helmet off so the audience could see his face, so he clearly wasn't who he was pretending to be. And all the stunts went wrong, and they all happened in the first round. And then, because it was a recorded thing, they just had to keep running round and round in circles.
I think we're talking health and safety nightmare.
Yes.
We're going to move on in just a moment to talk about Trouser Bar The Musical. But right now we're going to take just the briefest of breaks, because we like to know what our friends at Peccadillo Pictures are up to. So please have a look at this and then join us again in a couple of minutes.
Arjava.
ვინახარ? იცი სად მოხვედი?
ქართულ ნაციონალურ ანსამბლში.
მე მოიხსენე ეგ საყურე.
ეს ახალი ბიჭი ძალიან სტყელბურაა.
ანუ ჩემზე უკეთესად საკვავს, ხო?
ბიჭო, არ არის ეს საქმე შენთვის, რატო ვერ გაიგე კაცო შენ რა?
შენი ძმა ახლახანს მოვიდა.
ათიონის.
არ მო. ომტია ბიჭო, გაუშვი.
3, 4, ბავშვი. თავარ ანსამბლში ჭირდებათ 1 მოცეკვავე.
გასავად. შესარჩევები როდის იქნება?
ძალიან მალე იქნება.
არასწორად აკეთებ. მუხსეცულად ეცემი და იტკენ და ვეღარ იცნობ.
ქართული ცეკვა ვაშკაცობაზეა დაფუძნებული. სისუსტის ადგილი არა.
Thanks for joining us again. I'm David McGillivray on Little Did You Know, and this week my special guest is Shaun McKenna, who, as we've just established, has probably written about 10 musicals. We're just about to talk about one that hasn't happened yet. It's in development. Now, this requires me to tell you very briefly about how this came about. A few years ago, I made a film called Trouser Bar. It's still available on this Peccadillo DVD. Trouser Bar was made despite the fact that a charitable trust didn't want me to make it, and the only way we could get it shown was by removing the name of the alleged screenwriter, a celebrated theatrical knight. As I often say in these circumstances, that's all I can say. But if you want more information, you can Google it. It's all over the internet. Now, the film was shown at Flair, the Lesbian and Gay Film Festival at BFI South Bank here in London. And then it went all around the world. And for just about a year, I did have a marvelous time introducing it in places like Buenos Aires and Ghent. And this must have got back to a composer called Leighton House. And I was at a garden party. He was sitting on the other side of the table to me. And he said, "Have you ever thought about turning Trouser Bar into a musical?" I said, honestly, no. It was the farthest thing from my mind. But I liked the idea nevertheless. And the next thing I knew, he'd phoned up his lyricist. Yes, it's my guest, Shaun McKenna. I believe you were on holiday in Turkey. Shaun, what was your reaction when this subject was brought up?
I don't remember if I was on holiday. I do go to Turkey every year, so maybe. I probably thought it was a ridiculous idea. I usually think things are a ridiculous idea when people suggest them and then think about it and go, yeah, well, no. But the initial idea, I think, was to actually turn the film itself and the story of the film itself into a musical. And then looking at it and discussing it, the story of how the musical came to be made, of how the movie rather came to be made, was really very compelling. And it's a story that goes back, it has its roots back in the 60s. With a fantastic gay filmmaker, gay guerrilla pioneer filmmaker called Peter de Rome, who was making stuff at the time like no other gay porn. I mean, it's not even really gay porn, it's kind of gay erotica, where it was joyful and happy and people were enjoying themselves and nobody had to die as a result because of their evil sin. And then the story of the alleged author and his participation in it came along. And then we started looking at how we might tell this story. And it just brought up whole areas of, you know, the guy, just thinking about the guys who were in those films in the 60s, looking back at their young selves being, you know, young and fit and beautiful when there was a retrospective of these largely forgotten films in 2011, something like that, was just too interesting to bear. So it started off sort of as like, well, I can write some really funny songs here, and Leighton writes great tunes, but the show and the story developed a kind of emotional depth and a kind of statement about freedom, actually, a statement about freedom and being who we are and who we're allowed to be. And I'm incredibly proud of the piece as it stands at the moment.
So indeed, as it's turned out, the musical version is not just a musical of a 20-minute silent film. It's a musical about the lead up to it and this remarkable man called Peter de Rome. Can I just mention that the film Peter de Rome, Grandfather of Gay Porn, is available. It's a Peccadillo release. It's still out there. Yes, and I was very impressed with how a musical could be made of this film. Now, I'm wont to say that I like everything. I say that because, you know, I find people can't take criticism. So if somebody says, "What do you think of my X?" I say, "I loved it." So probably you're thinking to yourself, Shaun, well, he says he loves this, but how can we believe him? I'm telling you now that we wouldn't be having this conversation now if I wasn't so impressed with what has come together, and what has come together over a year, almost entirely on Zoom, because of course we haven't really been able to meet. Most of the meetings have been done like this. It's been extraordinary, hasn't it?
It has. Leighton is, it varies composer to composer. Some composers, you write the lyrics first, I write the lyrics first, and then they go away and set them. Other composers like to give you a tune and then you play about with it and change it as you go along. Or some people give you a tune and that's the tune, and so you've got to fit to it. Leighton kind of writes the stuff first, but in Trouser Bar, he's also really expanded beyond his usual range, and I've been writing kind of like, you know, Vogue lyrics and the sort of thing that I wouldn't normally think I would do at all. It has been, and it's not a conventional musical. It's not it has a book, but it's not a book musical in that sense. It has characters, but it's not a character based musical in that sense either. So I think it's something a bit new and a bit different.
It certainly is, but this poses the question, you know, our audience is going to be ready for this. I think right from the start, probably I said, I can't see this on Shaftesbury Avenue somehow. What do you think the prospects are for an unusual musical like this?
I completely agree with you about Shaftesbury Avenue, but stranger things have happened. I think if we were on in America, I'd say this was an off-Broadway show. We don't entirely have that here, but I think it's the kind of thing that would start somewhere, you know, one of the bigger fringe houses, or even possibly one of the smaller West End houses. I mean, it's never going to be a show to fill the Palladium for 25 years, you know? That's not what that is. In a sense, I never think about I never think about who the audience is. I just think about what the story is, what the show seems to demand and require, and you can never tell actually what's going to be a hit. I've worked on things that I thought were going to be surefire smash, big successes which have lasted 6 weeks, and I've worked on things that have been really well received that I thought were pretty mediocre, and I'm not the person to judge it. So as long as I feel that I've told the story in the best way that I can and the show's the best it can possibly be, then sort of over to a producer to market and take it forward.
Well, at the moment, of course, we can't even have what's known as a showcase in which you put together extracts from the show for potential investors. But, you know, one day, maybe, when all this is over, we can talk seriously about that. Now, the first day I met you to discuss Trouser Bar, I think it was at the National Theatre. I had, in fact, met you briefly before, but we sat down, and you said, you know, in passing, I've just come out, and I honestly thought you meant I just left home to get to the theatre. And then you told me that I got the wrong end of the stick. Now, I mean, I'd assumed, you know, because I'd read all these very moving posts that you'd put on social media about your late wife, that you were heterosexual. That is a little bleep there that I got. My virus definitions have been up. You'll be pleased to hear. It's something I can't mute. This happens. Let's get back to the topic. Can you elaborate, Shaun?
Well, I think I kind of told you half the story earlier on at the beginning. once I decided to start dating again, I saw men and, well, a couple of women and a few men. And because what happened was I went out for supper with my old mate and thought, I wonder if anything's going to happen. And clearly nothing was. Then I went home and went, oh, I'm really disappointed, actually. Now that I am single again, there is absolutely no reason to not to explore that side of my sexuality. So I started, in all the usual ways with the apps and all that stuff, which is completely new to me and didn't exist when I was in my 20s. And I was very, very frightened at the beginning, and because I thought, I'm old, nobody's going to want me. And that clearly isn't true, because I tend to fancy men who are younger than me. I get a lot of flack sometimes from gay men who insist that I must have been living a lie for 30 years and that I was always gay and I was just too repressed by society to admit it. And I absolutely refute that.
Why are you so adamant about that?
Well, because I was gay, but I was sleeping with men before I met. I don't think it's a binary choice. There is a sort of feeling that, if you, I don't know what I'm allowed to say on here. There is a feeling that once you've had a bit of cock, you can't ever go back, and you are therefore gay. I am on a spectrum somewhere like everybody else, and at the moment, and as far as I can see for the foreseeable future, it is the gay side of the gay end of my spectrum that I'm exploring and playing at.
All right. How exactly are you dealing with these newfangled apps? Is it exciting?
It is quite exciting, though. The huge thing, two huge things. The first thing I have discovered is that as an older man coming, and interestingly, I've become quite good friends with several men of my age who have come out. Most of them have divorced, in fact, who have come out later in life. It is very reassuring to discover that you're not on the scrap heap at this, once you've passed 60. And there are young men who are interested. I have discovered that the shape of gay relationships is not at all like the shape of straight relationships, which I kind of assumed it would be. I kind of assumed it would be like having a relationship with a woman, but just with a man. But relationships are so much more varied, and everything has its own particular, shape, its own particular dynamic. It's much less judgmental. It's much less, this has to be forever. It's infinitely easier to have lovely, friendly, respectful, enjoyable sex with men than it is with women, by and large, in my experience. And people's attitudes are different.
Are you currently in a relationship?
No. I'm currently in what could be described as a couple of mini relationships.
What does that consist of?
There are a few people, not a few, a few's too many. There are a couple of people I see regularly for friends with benefits.
Do you wish you'd come out earlier?
No, because that would mean wishing that the 30 years of my marriage hadn't existed. So I would wish that I hadn't waited so long after my wife's death before I started putting a toe back into those waters. But I really don't regret anything. I honestly believe, looking back at my 20s, and I said this at the time, that it could have gone either way, whoever I fell in love with. So, I don't know. I'm probably a B on the LGBTQ. I may be a Q, I don't know, or whatever the spectrum is. But I honestly believe that it is not. I don't think love essentially is about who has what and puts it where. I think it's about the connection with the other person, and that you use whatever is there within, physically within those relationships to nurture each other and give each other pleasure.
No major regrets. That's the important thing. Pleased to hear it, Shaun. Now,
Don't believe in regrets.
it's essential, yes. Before we wrap this up, I do want to mention another of your projects because it's important. It's happened during lockdown. Tell us what Peter Pan is all about.
Oh, this was a great thing. Some friends were going to do an audio version of Peter Pan because Great Ormond Street Hospital this year has done incredibly badly because they haven't get the royalties from all the productions of Peter Pan. So they came up with the idea.
Just say, for those who don't know, that when the author J.M. Barrie died, he willed the proceeds of Peter Pan to Great Ormond Street Hospital, and of course during lockdown there have been no productions. Sorry about that. Carry on, Shaun.
No, that's fine. And so it was designed to do an audio version with an all-star cast. People, brought their friends in, or the friends of friends and contacts, to do this, broken into 4 acts like the original play. And all the proceeds go to Great Ormond Street. We have the most fantastic cast. We have Kenneth Branagh playing Captain Hook. We have Olivia Colman playing the maid. We have Sharon D. Clarke narrating, Clive Rowe playing Smee, Bertie Carvel and Joanna Riding as the Darlings. We have Jason Fleming and Jane Horrocks as pirates. Charlie Cameron as a splendid Peter Pan, and the whole thing, and the children, the Lost Boys, are played either by patients at Great Ormond Street Hospital, kids suffering from cancer or recovering from cancer, or their siblings. So the whole thing was done with huge enthusiasm right at the end of last year and finally released on Christmas Eve. The website is listentopeterpan.com, and you can get it on iTunes, and it's only £3, and all of that £3 goes to Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital. So everybody should buy one.
This is an absolutely magnificent cause. And I think we should just say one more time how people can listen to this. I had down here that it's available through something called the familystage.co.uk. Is that another means of hearing it?
It may well be. I can't speak to that. I don't know. I know it's available on iTunes, but the website is listentopeterpan.com. So if you go there, it will give you all the connections. And they are really, Branagh's Hook is so funny. He's so funny and slightly tragic as well. So it works really well.
Shaun, thank you so much for talking to me today on Little Did You Know. Let us just mention before you part that a lot of your other work is available to listen to. Am I right in saying that a lot of your radio work is on Audible?
You are. You can get. I did 4 of the complete Smileys a few years ago, which they don't credit me on the website on Audible, but I'm credited on the CD. And there's also my the adaptation of the Forsyte saga that I did with Lynn Coughlin, and then there was an 11-week Arnold Bennett mashup called Chinatown, which is also fantastic, that Lynn and I did last year, or possibly the year before now. So yeah, you can get all of that on Audible, or you can check out my website, which is shaunmckenna.me.
There's enough here for a veritable Shaun McKenna festival. That's it for now, viewers on YouTube. But of course, Patreon subscribers can now go direct to Patreon to get a bonus 15 minutes. See you there, Patreon subscribers. And for all the rest of you, you lovely people, I'll be back again at the same time next week with another exciting guest. I can't confirm exactly who it is at the moment because we're still trying to work out whether his internet connection is suitable. But please join me then for now, however, from me, David McGillivray. Mwah. Bye-bye.